Hello and welcome back to Blackwatch Intel. My name is Crashy and today we're going to be talking about throwers. Now, I don't really have a super organized way of putting this, and it's really just kind of ripping off the dome. And it's things I've kind of said to friends or, kind of had discussions with on live streams or anything like that about the topic of throwers. And I think there are some things to be understood about throwing and about throwers and the perception of throwing, and then just this whole general specific toxic behavior that definitely does go on in Overwatch. And I kind of just want to explore that. I kind of want to bring up the topic to myself, turn on the mic, and just see where this leads me. And this is actually a pretty fun thing that I like to do. It's actually a big way of how I do my recording. So if you're ever curious, sometimes I just pick a topic and I just decide to rip on it and see kind of where it leads me. So that said, throwing. Let's talk about throwers. I want to go on ahead and say that I think that there are actually, and I don't even think this, I'm pretty positive, I know that there are way less throwers in competitive Overwatch than you think there are. And I want to say that because I want you to understand that your perception of what is throwing, your opinion of what is throwing, and the literal definition of someone joining a game and throwing are very different. So I want to explain, and again, this is still very opinionated, this is still very much so, my perspective, but I want to go on ahead and say that the guy that's one-tricking on your team, or the guy that, decided to play Widow, etc., he's not actually throwing. I want to say that he or she wants to win as badly as you, if not more, and while what they're doing may not be optimal, and maybe it is, and it's not optimal in your perspective or in your team's eyes or even the enemy's eyes, that person wants to win, and they do not want to lose, and they're not trying to lose, and ultimately they're not trying to throw. So there's a difference between being a thrower and throwing a game. Now, I think unintentionally throwing a game happens almost every single match. Unintentionally popping an ult, or popping an ult in a bad position, staggering 2 or 3 times in a row, that's throwing the game. Having a poor pick and, not recognizing it, or just having poor game sense and the inability to, perform as a team member or as a team, that's throwing. But being a thrower is, joining a game, talking shit, sitting in spawn, shooting at the walls, jumping off the map. And this is behavior that I can say I've gotten in maybe 4 or 5% of my matches ever since I've played Overwatch. And it's going to segue into a bit of a different discussion on the topic, but I kind of really wanted to explore this. I want to explore the fact that this season and this mode is not flooded with throwers. I think it's flooded with scenarios that have been thrown, and I think it's flooded with the perception that what you think is right and necessary and appropriate in the game is not necessarily what others think. And thus, because we are very selfish beings in nature, it's easy to say, well, oh my god, my team this and that. My team this. My team, didn't group up. My team never got any kills. My DPS were so bad. My tanks always dove so far. I never got healing. And then you label them throwers, and that's not necessarily the case. And I think that's important to kind of run through in your mind. I think it's important to be a very self-aware person. This is something I live my life by. I do my best to be honest with myself, and I'm not successful, if that makes sense. But I think it's important to really understand what's going on. And sometimes the realization, the self-awareness of saying, well, my team's not throwing. We are throwing, but they're not throwers, and they're not trying to lose. They're not D-rankers. That's basically what the term should be at this point. But we're just not doing very well. And I think it's also important to remember that in 100% of games, there is a team that loses. Well, that's not true. You can have a tie. But, you know what I mean? I'll put it this way. In 100% of a game, 100% of games in Overwatch, there is a team that does not win. That is true. In every single match of Overwatch, there is a team that does not win. And that doesn't mean they had throwers. And I just wanted to bring that up because I think there is a very weird misconception and perception on what's actually going on. And this is really going to lead me into what I think is the more important perspective and topic on this issue, is that you need to stop throwing your own games. Stop. I think I actually had to run through this myself somewhere in the middle of Season 3 or Season 4, where I realized that my desire to be a really amazing Genji player was actually causing me problems. And I ended up, kind of sticking with it and forcing myself to improve by paying attention to my own issues in-game and realizing that sometimes Genji just wasn't going to work for me. But that said, people don't do that, and you get unfavorable comps that are still winnable. You get unfavorable teammates, one-tricks, people that are not going to swap, people that don't communicate, people that, you have to form your strategy around. But the game is winnable until you make a decision, until you decide in your own mind that they're throwing, the game's lost, we haven't even made it a whole round in to capture map, and, it's done. I'm swapping to Hanzo. And I think it was best summed up in a game that I played on stream recently, where I basically had a very unfavorable comp. The composition did not look good. We had a Hanzo one trick. We, had people that were unwilling to fill the necessary roles. And I think we ended up playing something like 3 DPS, 1 healer, and 2 tanks, which, if you really analyze that composition, is not too terrible. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not what I would deem as optimal, unless you maybe had like a Symmetra, or we're going for some kind of an aggro strategy. But it's definitely not what I think most people in the game would perceive, I think it's an important word here, would perceive as optimal. And having said that, I don't think that the Hanzo one trick was the problem. I don't think that he was throwing the game. I think he wanted to win, but I think he wanted to win on his own terms. Now again, that lowers your percentage chance to win, because obviously he can be countered, obviously Hanzo's not the best pick in the meta right now, etc. But that doesn't mean he's throwing. Now here's the kicker. When the guy that was playing, I think he was playing Reinhardt or Winston, a very important role, something that we were going to need regardless, decided to swap off and go Sombra, and complain the whole time while doing it, that is what I think is throwing. So me and the guy proceeded to kind of have a very small pseudo argument about how I blamed him for our loss, or I was frustrated with his decision making in the game and not our Hanzo. And I will defend my perspective. I think he threw that game more than Hanzo did. I think that the Hanzo was doing his best, and Hanzo wanted to play what he wanted to play, and some people aren't going to swap no matter what you do. So control yourself, control your situation, and understand that you can only do what you can do. You can only control your side of things. You're 1/6 of the team, and you have to take it upon yourself to make the best decision that you can as 1/6 of the team. And whether that means you feel in your heart that staying on your pick and doing the best you can because that's your role, and that's what you want to do, or being a flex player and swapping, or just leaving things as is and just doing your best. But again, I think the majority of this topic and the majority of this discussion was that we just need to stop throwing our own games. We need to stop misusing the word throwers. We need to stop saying everyone's throwing. We need to understand that there is a difference between people that are going into matches intentionally losing and trying to D-rank, and there's a difference between people that are stubborn with the way they want to win. And they're not right either. I'm not here to defend one-trick players. I'm not here to defend the Hanzo player, because I lose lots of games to those people as well. Or at least that's my perception. But we can only do what we can do. And this discussion is a little bit weird because it's very serious. I think it's something that needs to be heard sometimes. I think we need to stop being so I don't know. So willing to just give up. We need to stop being weak. We need to start being very self-aware about the situation, and we need to ultimately do the best that we can in every situation. And that means being as level-headed as possible. So that's my discussion for today. I think it's a pretty important one. I think it's definitely a topic that's worth exploring. And I'm curious what your thoughts are. I mean, what do you think? What can you do in situations like these? Are there really just people throwing every game? Or is it, sometimes you that throws? So thanks for watching this video. Please do not leave without leaving a like and subscribe for future content. I'm looking forward to doing more discussion videos for you all. Thank you for checking out the channel, and I'll see you for the next video.